A
Goodness.
joy coach.
Right.
Do
Yeah.
people need help finding joy?
Yeah, they really do. And what's funny is the people who need the help don't realize that they do. They hear that I do this and they think, oh, that's good for some people. And yet they're the ones, because life is just so wild and it's so busy, we don't really stop and think about the level of joy in our lives. And hey, I am speaker, joy coach, and soon to be author Robin Shear here with Molly. And while I put together a speaker's reel, I wanted to share with you a few recent media interview highlights so that you can see what I'm all about and what I can bring to your next story or live event. So let's get into it.
So tell us a little bit about what kind of programs or stuff you do for people
Sure.
that they may be interested in learning more about.
Sure. So I do all my coaching online. And so, when people sign up for coaching, we spend about 2.5 hours together the first time. And we just really dig into the person as an individual. And I love that process because you can learn so much. And sometimes people are learning about themselves for the first time.
Yeah.
I had one client, and this guy is so educated. He has so many PhDs. He has studied all of the world religions. I mean, he is so experienced. And we did a session like that together, and he was in tears at the end, and he said, I feel like I'm seeing myself for the first time, and I'm a good person.
Robin, we were just talking about how you are able to help others as a life coach. So what are some of the first things that you do when someone reaches out to you to discuss their lack of joy?
And then we start to look at, okay, what is your priority? If you could look back a year from now and be thrilled with the progress that you've made and in the joy level of your life, what would that look like? What would make you feel like this was a year that was well spent? And when that answer comes out, we've got a goal, and then we just go for it. And it is so much fun.
So one of the things I really appreciate about you is when I watched one of your videos, you talked about how you had head trauma on a ski. Can you do a quick version of what happened and what was the outcome?
Yeah, so last January, so in 2021, I was skiing with my family. I went over a jump when I was not ready. I landed hard on the back of my head, ended up in the emergency room, had a concussion, didn't think too much of it. I thought, okay, in a week I'll be okay. And that's not what happened. And I was unable to use my computer. I'm a small business owner. You mentioned that I'm a coach and a speaker, and I'm a solopreneur. So all of a sudden I couldn't work because it hurt too bad. And I was emotional, and my head was just throbbing all the time, and I was exhausted. I couldn't have lengthy conversation. I couldn't focus on it. I couldn't be in group settings at all. I was overwhelmed super easily. I couldn't even follow recipes for the longest time. I kept losing my place. And so you can imagine, the thoughts that were going through my head. And this lasted for 5 months. And it was a lot different than, I was expecting. And I learned so much along the way about really digging in and choosing joy, because sometimes joy is so natural and it just bubbles up, it just happens and it just feels so good. But then the rest of the time, when life is just full of confusion and things we didn't sign up for, we do need to know how to choose it. And that's what I really learned. I had to really put my own theories into practice. And I had already been coaching at this point. I had been speaking on it, but man, I'll tell you what, Carl, to apply it so personally and see the difference that it made in my outlook, in my perspective, just in my reaction to things, my ability to cope with difficulty, my acceptance of it. It just really changed my journey. And yeah, I'm happy to say that my head healed. I didn't know if it was going to. And I got to a point where I decided, if this is going to be my new normal, if I'm going to be one of those people who gets an injury that's permanent, so be it. But I am not going to live life in bubble wrap. I will not just lay here for the rest of my life and do nothing. And I am going to find ways to be joyful, even if they're new to me, because to be honest, a lot of the old ways weren't possible while I was recovering. And so that was something that I had to learn about. So yeah, the learning was extensive. And you saw the video, I've got a series of videos about it. And that's really the core message of the book that I'm writing. And I think that, the average human being who doesn't have a perfect life will relate really well to how to choose joy when life is messy.
Is joy something that we have to chase or receive?
What an excellent question. To me, joy is both, because there are moments where joy just bubbles up. It is a gift of the Spirit. It's a fruit of the Spirit. And so, it's something that we are given, and we receive it, and it feels so good when we do. And then the question is, okay, well, what about those times when we don't feel it? What about those times when, we don't love the diagnosis? What about those times when we get the pink slip and it's not bubbling up? What happens then? And so what I want is to help people recognize the fact that there are times that you can learn how to choose joy. And notice I didn't say chase, because I'm with you, but I do think that it can be chosen. And so there are steps you can take. Coaching can help, because we don't all just jump out of bed naturally joyful like you. Like one example, I worked with a young woman who didn't like to hug. She just didn't. That wasn't her love language. And her mother very desperately wanted to hug her all the time. That was like how she showed love. And it was so interesting because the daughter was trying so hard to communicate her love for her mother, and it just kept flying over the mom's head because all she was looking for were hugs. And so in coaching, when we began to talk about all of this stuff, I remember the mom just really breaking down and recognizing, my daughter has been trying to love me all along. I just didn't get it. And so, if they can know each other better and just move forward as a unit and be on the same team, so much joy is possible. It just totally results in joy. You cannot help but be more joyful when you feel like you're valued and you feel like you're wanted and you're heard.
So is there any physiological benefits to joy, and what are they?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I'm glad that you're going there, because otherwise we might hear this conversation and think, I have important stuff to do. This is not a priority for me. But when we realize that people who are more joyful live longer, and not only live longer lives, they live healthier lives and more fulfilling lives, then we start to think, maybe this should be a priority for me. And so the types of things that it can really lead to are things like lower rates of heart disease, lower rates of stroke, high blood pressure is better. And I mean, those are killers of Americans and people worldwide. And so if we can prevent that stuff and feel better, right? Like actually feel better in those extra years that we get, just imagine the connections we could have, the memories we could make, the experiences we could have. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing when you stop and think about the actual physiological benefits.
Yeah, that's just tremendous that you could impact, someone's life in that way. But as a life coach, sometimes people, I'm sure, may look at you for all the answers, but is that really your job, to give people all the answers?
Thank you for asking me that question. I would tell you if I could, girl. No, that is not my job.
Right.
I'd make myself crazy and I'd make you crazy. No. And what I love about this is like, okay, it is empowering to be the client who is told no. I will not give you all the answers because you don't need me to. They're in there. They are in there. And you and I are going to dig gently and beautifully and honestly and safely together until we pull those things out. And when you realize it's been in there all along, you're going to fly. You are going to fly.